I think in the short term, of course, it is good news, but I would have concerns about what this means in the long term, because Everton are also facing a second charge. And if a precedent has now been set that if you break these financial rules, you're going to be hit with a 6-point penalty, if they get the same penalty for this second charge, then they're going to get another 6-point penalty. So at the moment, they're up to 15th in the table with 25 points. But if they get 6-point penalty for the second charge, then they would be back down to 19th place because they would lose another 6 points.
Yeah.
So I think, look, in the short term, of course, it is pretty good news. I think if you were an Everton fan, you would have been hoping that you wouldn't have had a points deduction at all. That all the 10-point deduction would have been overturned and you would have been hit with just a financial penalty, like a big fine. But as it is, I think it's a little bit of good news, not too much. I wouldn't be getting too carried away if I was an Everton supporter, and I think Everton fans will still be angry about this whole process and also the fact that they are fighting for their lives at the bottom of the Premier League and they still have to fight another charge as well. And I think that if the outcome is the same as the first charge, then it's very likely that they'll get another 6-point deduction.
It's interesting, reading between the lines of the Premier League statement, you know, they said that the Everton FC appealed the sanction imposed against it on 9 grounds, each of which related to the sanction rather than the fact of the breach, which the club obviously, we knew they'd admitted this breach, haven't they? And then the Premier League go in to say 2 of those 9 grounds were upheld by the appeal board, which has substituted the original points deduction of 10 for 6. So it kind of feels like those 2 were kind of pretty bad and worthy of 6 points. Because if it was 9 into 10, I'm trying to do a maths equation here, and you might think per point that they were making, they might have won a point back. And actually, they only won 4 points back, and only 2 of those 9 grounds were upheld.
It's interesting, the contrast between the statement from the Premier League and the statement from Everton. If you read the statement from the Premier League, it's very businesslike.
Yeah.
They just deal in the facts of what happened, and they finish off by saying that they're satisfied with today's decision. If you read the statement from Everton, they also say that they're satisfied with the reduction, but they also say that they are particularly pleased with one part of this decision, and that is the appeal board's decision to overturn the original commission's finding that the club had failed to act in good faith. So the original commission found that Everton had failed to act in good faith, and that has now been overturned. And as far as Everton are concerned, that is a very important point of principle. And they go on to say that they will now fully cooperate regarding the second charge with another new independent commission that is going to be set up. I mean, a lot of people from the outside looking in will be saying, what is going on with these financial rules? We are entering the most crucial part of the season where clubs, especially at the bottom of the table, do not know what the Premier League table looks like, because the bottom of the Premier League is being decided by these independent commissions which are being set up to look into financial matters. And I know a lot of fans will be thinking, look, if we're found guilty of breaking financial rules, we should be hit with a financial penalty, not a points deduction. Because if you look at the Premier League table now, the bottom, you don't know what is what. There have been points deductions. There could be more on the way. Appeals board have overturned and reduced sanctions. And we haven't even started talking about Nottingham Forest, because Nottingham Forest are facing a charge as well. And if the benchmark has today been set that you get a 6-point penalty if you break these financial rules, then I think Forest drop down into the relegation zone as well. They would be in 19th place. So it is a very confusing picture, but I think if you spoke to the Premier League, they're not going to speak in public, but I think if they could, they would say these are the rules that have been agreed by the 20 clubs. They were all voted on. These are the rules. They're in the rule book of the league, and that is what we have to stick to.
It's interesting that, the reasons summary that we sort of gave you, there were 61 pages of it, and I'm sure you haven't even had a chance to look through hardly any of it, but some of the mitigating factors, they were sort of saying the mitigating factor was that the losses reduced year on year. And I guess that's what they're going to hope helps this latest charge, that they still don't know what's happening with that, because that's on June 2023, but it goes back 3 years. So we go 2023, 2022, 2021, don't we? What sort of timescale are we looking at? Because they were deducted these 10 points on November the 17th, and here we are at the end of February, only just hearing about the appeal. So going on that, are we looking at April, May, or where are we looking at?
The rules say the reason this was done pretty quickly, although a lot of people will say it hasn't been quick at all, because Everton were originally deducted 10 points in November.
Yeah.
And where are we now? November, December, January, February, 3 months later, we finally had the appeals decision. Now the whole process has to start again with 2 separate commissions, one for Everton, one for Nottingham Forest as well. And then, of course, they will have the right to appeal, and then a new appeal panel would have to be set up. But the Premier League insistent that this all needs to be done within like 3 or 4 days after the end of the season. So we're still heading for a situation where we could have games on the final day of the season and we won't be sure what the bottom of the Premier League looks like because we won't have had the final decisions about these points deductions, possibly for Everton and Nottingham Forest. I think it's important just to state the background to this. The reason why we are where we are is that clubs are allowed to lose £105 million over a rolling 3-year period. And Everton admitted that they had lost more than that. I think it was £124.5 million. So they were £19.5 million over what they were allowed to lose. Now, in the grand scheme of things, £19.5 million in Premier League football terms is not a lot of money. Critics would argue that these rules should have been updated, that the amount you were allowed to lose should have increased in line with inflation and in line with how transfer fees have gone up. And if that had happened, then Everton wouldn't be in this situation at all. And certainly Nottingham Forest wouldn't be in this situation at all. Also, you have to think about, the Everton majority owner, Farhad Moshiri. They have got into this situation because he has spent too much money. He has lost about £750 million on his investment in Everton. The club have been involved in 3 straight Premier League relegation battles. They've gone through this whole process with the independent commission, then an appeal board as well. They're facing another charge as well, which could lead to another points deduction as well. And the club are more than £500 million in debt. They are building a brand new stadium. There is the whole takeover saga as well, with 777 partners in the background. So it is a very, very messy situation. And it is absolutely incredible to think what Everton fans must be going through at the moment, because it seems to be one blow after another. And you have to have some sympathy for them when they argue that these financial crimes should not be dealt with points deductions. They should be dealt with financial penalties. Don't punish the fans, punish the people who took these decisions and hit them in the pocket. Don't hit the team with points deductions. So
why are they then? That begs the question: why are they doing it to the club? Why are they points deduction? Why aren't they doing that?
Because the Premier League, it is made up of 20 clubs. They get together, they come up with new laws. People argue we should have these financial penalties. It's not fair that states are now owning clubs. We have to have very strict financial regulations in place, and if people break them, then there should be penalties, including points deductions. It's been voted on. It's all there in the Premier League handbook. So, I don't think Everton supporters can just blame the Premier League or the Premier League executive. The Premier League executive are just, enacting the policies that have been agreed upon by the 20 clubs.
At a time when an independent regulator, though, is supposedly the idea, is this kind of the Premier League saying, hang on a minute, we can do this ourselves. We can regulate ourselves. The Premier League clubs are agreeing with this. This is all above board. We're doing this in-house. Do you feel that?
I can understand what you're saying. I've heard that argument being made that the Premier League knows that there's an independent regulator coming along.
Yeah.
So what it wants to do is show that it is tough.
Yeah.
That the Premier League doesn't need an independent regulator, that it can take care of itself and it can punish clubs who break the rules. That's one way of looking at it. I'm not sure if that's the case. I'm pretty sure that the Premier League would say that is not the case. We are just going by the rules that have been agreed by the 20 clubs.
So that said, given the fact today that we've had this kind of retraction potentially, they've got the 4 points back, do you think Nottingham Forest are going to be looking at this today and thinking, right, worst case scenario, we get 6 points?
I think they are, because I think the issue is that basically with these rules, what you're doing is you're handing in your accounts, at the end of last year, and the accounts that you hand in show that you have lost more money than you should have. So it's pretty black and white. You're admitting the breach. And then there is an independent commission hearing where the Premier League will say, look, black and white, they've broken the rules. We suggest a 6-point deduction or a 9-point deduction or whatever it is. And then the club will defend themselves, Everton or Nottingham Forest, and will say, look, yes, we do admit that we broke these rules, but we broke these rules for a variety of reasons, because football is a very variable business. You don't know what's happening from one day to the other. You could get knocked out of a cup, you lose money, a transfer deal could fall through, you lose money. It is very difficult. So they'll be making all those arguments. Then it's up to that independent commission to decide what the punishment should be. I would just be worried if I was a Forest fan, and of course, every day you'd be worried if you're an Everton fan, because you think now that if 6 points is the sanction and that is the benchmark and that's been agreed, and Everton are saying they're satisfied and the Premier League is saying they're satisfied, does that mean from now on, whoever breaks these rules is definitely going to get 6 points? That is the worry I would have. Of course, this is all up in the air because we could have new rules coming in very soon as well, because I think the Premier League want to change their financial fair play rules so that they're more in line with UEFA's new financial fair play rules.
Just very finally and very briefly, because I know we're running out of time, but so then just in terms of this, and you probably don't know the answer to this, but I'm going to ask it as kind of like an Everton fan or a Nottingham Forest fan. They're sat at home and they're thinking, right, we won't get a 10 points the next time. We're going to get a 6 points and we can maybe appeal that. So could you see it reducing further, or do you think this is if they do say 6 points is the next charge and the 6 points will be the deduction, even if they appeal, they'll get no appeal. Do you see what I'm trying to say? Because that's where
it feels. It just feels a bit arbitrary. We've always looked at the league table, and the league table is the league table. That reflects performances on the pitch. 3 points for a win, 1 point for a draw. Now we've got to a situation where the league table is going to be decided by independent 3-person panels. And that's what's going to happen in Everton and Nottingham Forest's case. But as I said, the Premier League would say that this is all in the rule books. This has been agreed by the clubs. And there are plenty of clubs who will be happy with what is happening, because a lot of clubs will be saying, look,
we stuck by the rules.
We stuck by the rules.
Yeah.
Everton knew what the rules were. Nottingham Forest knew what the rules were, and for whatever reason, they've broken the rules. It has to be a level playing field for everybody. But I think a lot of people in football will have a lot of sympathy for Everton supporters and the situation that they're in. because the background to what has been going on and the fact that they're trying to build this new stadium. For instance, last week we heard from Jim Ratcliffe talking about rebuilding Old Trafford and how much that was going to cost. And Manchester United are supposed to be one of the biggest, richest clubs in the world, and they haven't been able to redevelop or build a new stadium. Whereas Everton, with all the problems they've been going through, with what happened with Alisher Usmanov and Ukraine and Russia, and takeovers falling through and managers leaving and problems in the transfer market as well, they've managed still to be on course to build a brand new stadium despite everything that has been going on.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see what the managers do think of it. We actually are going to hear from Rob Edwards shortly, so it'd be interesting to see what Luton fans think of it.
The real big winners today, funny enough, in the long term, could end up being Luton Town. Because if you look at the bottom of the league table, obviously it looks like Burnley and Sheffield United are in big trouble. But Luton, their position, I think, would be greatly affected by whatever happens to Everton and Nottingham Forest as well. Yeah,